With the release of Wynncraft Rekindled World, there have been added into the game 48 randomly occurring world events across the map, each with their own enemies and a boss. These events range across all levels, but they scale to be harder the higher level you are. Seeing this, I wanted to make a video beating every one of these events by myself, as they're usually intended to be beaten with a party of people. I mean, it couldn't be that hard, right? Okay, I played that off as a joke, but as I played more and more of them, it really did start feeling a bit easy. In fact, I ended up beating the first 46 of these events first try, and I only died to the second highest level one once, so what's the point? Why make a video about absolutely decimating my really easy challenge? Well, that's where we come to the last event. If you play regularly, you probably already know what this event is, but for those of you who don't, this is the biggest, baddest boss on the server, and it holds back no punches. Let me introduce you to the prelude to Annihilation. This is the hardest world event on the server by far, and unlike the others, it's a server-wide activity that everybody gets in on, forming huge parties of up to 10 people. Usually players have different roles and pay attention to different parts of the fight, giving callouts and generally aiding their team, but for me, I have to take all the hits, deal all the damage, and not screw anything up, because if I die, there is nobody else who's gonna finish the fight for me. I have to be completely prepared and refuse the urge to go in blind and not look up any of his attacks before the fight. Okay, that could have gone better. There was something in the back of my head that told me I'd be fine trying this with basically no preparation, but I learned very fast this was going to be harder than I thought. At this point I knew that I needed a battle plan and I needed to prepare, starting with a build. I wanted to solo this thing on my favorite class, the mage, and I messed around with a few different mythic weapons to no avail. That is until I found someone on YouTube who had done the hard work for me and soloed it with the Arcanist archetype, which is my favorite. He also conveniently left his build in the description for anyone to use if they wanted. I tend to hoard a lot of items, so getting the pieces for the set was the easy part, but what took a little while longer were finding some consumables to go with it.
Good. That's good right there.
In Wynncraft, consumables are extremely powerful, being able to supplement and boost your strengths and weaknesses many times over, and I was in need of some, seeing as this build, while very strong damage-wise, has the defense of wet toilet paper. Also, my walk speed ended up being slower than a Dell laptop, and I really like fast builds, so I needed to do something about that. After asking around a bit, a friend gave me 5 consumables for health and health regeneration that looked pretty necessary in order for me to finish my goal. And the only thing standing in my way was buying the ingredients for the— oh man, that's expensive. Okay, not all of the ingredients were that expensive, but it would still cost quite a lot unless I wanted to gather them myself, which I did partially. I did end up buying a lot of the stuff I needed, but thank you to a couple of my friends who donated a few of the more expensive ones to me. After that, seeing as I haven't leveled my professions— you gross professions, ugh, I got one more person to craft the items for me and I was set. I suited up, grabbed my new goodies, equipped my new mythic Arcanist aspect of total obliteration, along with a few extra scrolls for extra damage and mana regen, and I set out to beat this boss. I didn't beat it. I thought I was prepared, and in another mindset I might have been, but right before the fight I started getting shaky. You can even see at the start how I was panicking just trying to use all of my consumables in time, and I ended up having trouble with the sun. Oh yeah, the sun. This thing spawns in twice throughout the fight, and if you don't kill it, it grows in power until it blocks out your screen and nukes the whole arena. I wasn't able to kill it, and while I thought I died to the sun itself, I think I got hit with the boss's meteor attack while my screen was covered. This fight just wasn't good, and I was forgetting the most basic things like building debuffs on the boss and just using my spells properly. But all I could do was make a mental note on what to do better so I could remember it next time.
12 seconds later.
My third attempt didn't go much better than the second, but it was still helpful. I was still learning to remember fully what to watch out for each of the boss's attacks, and while I did manage to get past the sun, I totally forgot that with the sun comes a batch of 2 healers on either side of the arena that you have to kill to keep the fight going. I remembered this a bit later than I should have, and while I did go to start taking them out, I was already getting a little low on health and I ate a full power meteor to the face. But this is also when I learned something else very important about my fights with the sun. I'm gonna show you a clip and I want you to watch and see if you can figure out any problems with what's happening. Notice anything? First problem is negative 40% of you guys are subscribed. How does that even work? But second of all, did you see that? Right there. When I look back at this footage originally, I noticed that a lot of my meteors were landing above the sun. I did some experimenting around, and there was actually a very specific angle at which casting your meteor stops locking the attack to the ground, and subconsciously I was raising my camera angle up extra high to compensate for this. But what I learned is that if you aim too far above that angle, the meteor targets so high that it hits way above the height of the sun. There is a feature where your meteors are supposed to lock onto targets close to where you're aiming, but I guess that just doesn't happen in this case. But with my new knowledge of meteor in hand, as well as a new mage aspect that increases the explosion size of my meteors, I just looked back while writing the script and I realized I didn't even have it active. That would have been helpful earlier. I waited for another annihilation to happen so I could bring together all I had learned and take down this big watermelon looking guy. And as the fight went along, it started looking promising. By this point, I had learned the fight pretty well and I was able to play it pretty safe. A little too safe. I was doing damage to the boss, and I remembered to keep applying debuffs and take out the healers at proper times, but I was taking too long. As time went on, I started one by one, running out of buffs, taking more and more damage, and I had made the mistake of bringing consumables I had used the previous 2 fights and only had 1 charge left of, leaving me with some very basic stat potions and a slowly dying dream of beating the event that day. It wasn't all bad, however, as I knew I could do it. I knew I had what it took to survive, I had made it this far, and if I just had more consumable charges, I knew I could do it. And there I stood, wand in hand, armor in place, aspects locked and loaded. Almost. And more consumables than I had ever come to an annihilation with before. It was do or die, my greatest attempt. The failures from before just lessons in what I had to do better, all building up to this point. This run, this goal. Annihilation? No, not on my watch. Starting off, I used my consumables and got in place. As soon as he came out of the portal, I was ready to build the winded debuff to do extra damage, and then it was time to cycle. I cast Ice Snake, Meteor, over and over to build up my first mana bank until I could unleash the power of Chaos Explosion, and with a vengeance. I built another, and another, but not without resistance, no. Annihilation was not happy at my flurry of attacks and responded in kind with his fiery breath. But I didn't care. My scrolls are too powerful for you, I said as I activated Chain Lightning, doing absolutely no damage. And as I attacked over and over, even the fabric of the server started to strain, lagging everything around me, but I didn't care. Lag meant I could attack Annihilation more times for every time he attacked me, but he didn't like this. He wound up and cast meteors of his own, but I was prepared. At this point, I was ready for the instant his hand started to point, and after timing another burst of attacks, I raced off, dodging him like Al Capone dodging his taxes back in 1931, but unlike Capone, I was not caught. I was too quick, and this is where he did it. He pulled out his biggest trump card, a new sun. But then I thought back on the teachings of Sun Tzu where he said, yo, that Pythagoras guy is kind of good at angles, and I used the teachings to hit the sun with meteors until it died. By the way, I don't think that's how a sun dies in real life, but anyway. But that wasn't all. I had to deal with the healers, left and right. I had to take them out as I started making some missteps. I got hit with a meteor and I had to flee to heal, and it took the next level of concentration I had to pull the fight back together. After what seemed to be hours of fighting the 3 total healers that spawned, I had done it. I had made it past what I had accomplished before, and I took this moment as a chance to recharge a few consumables before running back and starting the cycle again. The healers had done a great deal to patch him up, but I wasn't bothered. I had done this before, and I started to get hope as to the outcome of the battle. But that's when it happened. I started taking damage. I had backups of my potions, but how long would they last? I still had a whole nother sun to deal with. It was now or never. I ran to the back to check all of my buffs, making sure I had as many as I could running. And then I went to town. The second wind was amazing, and I was soon able to make it to the second sun, which almost caught me off guard, though I disposed of it quickly. All that stood in my way was 10 million health. I knew I could do it, but my consumable pile was growing ever smaller by the second. Every now and then, I would run away to the back to make sure I was stocked up on everything I had left, even dipping into my reserve of health potions. But the boss was losing. With nothing left, he raised his hand and called in another healer to aid him. Any chance he had to distract me while he threw another batch of meteors at me, but it was no use. I may have taken a big hit, but he was about to take a much larger one. With the end in sight, he desperately called for another healer, but it was no use. I was at the end. I was starting to falter, but so close. And that's when it happened. No, not that, not this. I did it. Oh man, that was so hard. Did you see what my inventory looked like before I did all this and how many consumables I used? Oh man. I gotta say, that was a really hard challenge. But man, that was worth the payout. Am I even gonna get a cash? Whoa. No cash, but whatever. I got a lot of liquid emeralds. Woo! I know this was extra dramatic, but I really got into the mood while writing the script for this video, and I hope it turned out alright. I don't usually write hard scripts for my videos, so this is somewhat new for me. On a real note though, this was an incredibly fun challenge in the end, and I'm super happy I managed to pull through it. I've left the original solo video I found in the description if you guys want to try the build out for yourself, but as for me, I don't think I'll be soloing this guy again anytime soon. Also, I don't think I've mentioned in a while, but I've got a Discord server in the description you guys can join if you want, but other than that, you should subscribe or something, click this video that just popped up. I'm out of here. Thank you for sticking around to the end. Bye bye!